Today, we are going to dive in the topic of tariffs and tariffs in a small business. How do you think about the new tariffs that are squeezing small businesses as a CFO? They're increasing costs, they're squeezing profit margins. So we want to walk through how do we understand the impact of new tariffs on small businesses? How do we have proactive strategies to mitigate some of these tariff-related expenses? And then what are some examples, some real-life examples happening today, this very moment, of businesses that are adapting to the tariff landscape? We want to walk through practical steps to help safeguard your business and your business's financial health as we navigate this new world of trade policy shifts and things happening every single day that are impacting your business as we speak. So today, as we think about how tariffs have shifted overnight, completely skyrocketed, leaving small business owners trying to grapple with these unforeseen expenses, we're going to try to walk through how do we manage this in a way that ultimately helps us continue to build a thriving and profitable business. If you could just imagine your importing costs jumping from $26,000 to $346,000 instantly, like that is the reality for some of the entrepreneurs today that are walking through this new tariff world that we live in. We're going to walk through actionable strategies to help navigate some of the new tariff landscape without compromising your business viability. So let's walk through an overview of recent tariff changes. Today is April 9th, 2025. So things will change on April 10th, 2025. But we've got a baseline 10% tariff on most imports with specific countries that are facing higher rates. China now at about 104%, Vietnam at 46%, and there are targeted sectors, including apparel, electronics, and raw materials. And this information is coming from Business Insider, New York Post, so you can find links to that searching tariff impacts. You can find a lot of information online. But the immediate effect on small business is that we've got massive increased costs on imported goods and materials. If you've got less than 1 month of inventory on hand, your price structure will be changing within the next 30 days, and you have to be prepared for that. So there will be pressure to raise prices, potentially reducing customer demand depending on where in the market your product sits. If you're in the higher end premium luxury market, I suspect you're already seeing weaker demand based on macroeconomic factors. So what does this mean? We've got a strain on cash flow. We've got a strain on profit margins. If we look at the average tariff increases by country, China over 100%, Vietnam 46%, the EU about 20% today. So the real world examples that we're seeing today from small businesses having to confront these challenges, we see in the New York Post a company called Harkla. They specialize in sensory toys for children with special needs. Their tariff costs have gone up from $26,000 to $346,000. So what are they doing in response? They're looking to explore domestic manufacturing, even though they know that they're going to face higher production costs. I'll link to the article of the New York Post on this here in the show notes. Case study number 2, we've got a business called 316, a New York-based fashion brand that sources most of its materials from Japan and Canada. They're anticipating retail price increases of up to $50 per item. So how are they going to be managing retaining demand while increasing costs of their products so drastically? They're planning on simply just communicating transparently with customers saying, hey, listen, we don't want to adjust these prices upwards. However, the way in which our cost structure is predicated is changing drastically. We want to continue providing value to you through high quality products, but we can't continue to do that without raising prices. It's going to be a really tough communication point, but it's something that they're going to try to navigate with their clients. Right now, we're projecting about 20% increases across the industry of apparel, 10 to 15% for electronics, and about 15 to 25% increases for automotive parts. So we've got context around tariffs are increasing. There's a major shift in the landscape right now, no matter where you are sourcing your raw materials across the globe. So what are some strategies to help mitigate some of these tariff impacts? One, a lot of businesses are starting to move towards diversifying their supply chain. So they're identifying alternative suppliers in countries with lower or no tariffs. They're considering nearshoring or reshoring to reduce dependencies upon foreign imports. Here's some challenges with diversifying your supply chain, is that it takes a lot of time, effort, and money to be able to do that. you're going to have to reorient your quality control, reorient the education of the suppliers that you have to manufacture at the same quality that you have today. And so you don't want to rashly make a decision to diversify your supply chain, knowing that over the course of the next few months, there will be negotiations happening with the countries that you're currently supplied in. So I would take a look at this as an option if you can and have the ability to stand something up very quickly, but you don't want to sacrifice the quality of your product in order to diversify your supply chain because of a tariff. A better strategy, I think, is to negotiate with your existing suppliers. So you want to talk about the tariff costs with your suppliers and renegotiate terms to alleviate some of the financial pressure. Listen, your suppliers, your manufacturers that, let's say, are in China today, they don't want to lose business either. So if you're taking business away from them and moving it to Vietnam or moving it to another country, they are incentivized to retain your business. And so there could be some degree of tariff splitting with some of these suppliers. So let's start there. Let's start with negotiating before we start displacing supply chain to other countries. If we can start to optimize our operational efficiency and try to identify if there are areas of waste and or opportunities for lower production costs based on investing in technology, there's a lot of ways to look at your entire supply chain, identify where redundancies exist, identify where maybe there are some sticky points in how you're manufacturing today. Maybe you can consolidate some of that actually to one supplier in which you've already renegotiated your rates with. And so think about how to optimize your operational efficiency through negotiating with your existing partners. Like many businesses are doing, you can adjust your pricing strategy. I would move slowly into this. We've got some businesses in the market today are looking at their competitors and saying, well, are they raising prices? Because we don't want to raise them if they don't raise them, because they don't want to lose market share to their competitors. And so if you can walk through a market analysis to determine what products you have that have some elasticity in pricing, you could start to cherry pick those items that you can start raising prices on. Understand where in the market your pricing structure lives to be able to very intelligently raise prices and not just slap a 20% increase across all of your products on your website. That may not lead to an effective outcome that you're looking for. Be very intentional about how you are looking at margins across your products in order to then more intentionally raise prices where it makes the most sense. The other thing you could do is start to explore tariff exemptions, explore relief programs. There's some degree of government programs that are offering relief or exemptions for certain industries. Take a look at trade associations. Ask them for guidance and advocacy support. There could be some elements of power in negotiating numbers if there's a trade association that can help fight and negotiate on your behalf if you're a part of a larger group that has more bargaining power. If we think about the percentage of small businesses that are considering supply chain diversification today on April 9th, 2025, pre-tariffs, about 30%. Post-tariffs, 65% of small businesses are considering re-diversifying their supply chain, which is just an astronomical amount of businesses that are having to consider this massive change to their business to be able to stay afloat. Here's some things that we want to avoid as we navigate this uncertainty in tariffs. We don't want to have a delayed response. If you procrastinate your response, it can exacerbate your financial strain if your costs continue to go up. So we need to be proactive, but measured. We need to be proactive, but not rash in decision making. That will be crucial in making sure that you navigate this with poise, that you navigate this with a long-term mindset, even though this is a short-term pain point. We don't want to necessarily over-rely on a single supplier or market. However, there could be opportunities to maintain relationships within an existing market and negotiate within that market rather than going elsewhere. But if you're super reliant upon one supplier, you may want to look at options to reduce that vulnerability. You look at Apple in the market. They're heavily reliant upon China today. They're currently exploring India as a diversification strategy for production of their iPhone. The next thing we don't want to do is pass the entire cost on to customers without communication. A sudden price hike without an explanation can lead to some customer attrition. It can lead to lack of trust with your customer base. And so prior to enacting any kind of price change, you want to have a very measured response and communication strategy to your customers to ensure that you can retain some degree of their loyalty. Everybody in the market today is aware that prices naturally are going to be increasing. But you see companies like Ford and like Jeep that are saying, hey, we're actually going to move a different direction and we're going to offer our employee pricing to everybody. Now, their employee pricing may or may not be at par with what it was in the past because of how prices have naturally increased, but you see this marketing communication that elevates the customer, that makes the customer feel special, that is contrarian to what we're seeing around us. That could be a really valuable messaging strategy. So we've walked through tariffs very, very quickly and its impact on small businesses. But if you can walk away with a few things, conduct a comprehensive supply chain audit, identify areas that are susceptible to tariff impacts, start to explore alternatives, start to negotiate. Engage in open dialogue with your stakeholders. That could be suppliers, customers, your employees, your other vendors, on the challenges and strategies that you are contemplating to walk through this new uncertain market. Stay up to date on what's happening. You need to be monitoring changes to tariffs and seek professional support when needed. One of the things that we often see is that people are very quick to cut vendor relationships. Be very strategic about that. If you cut your marketing department, if you cut your marketing service provider, what's that going to do to your demand? Will it drastically impact the demand that your business has in market today? Most people cut relationships with CFO partners. Do you need this high-level strategic advice in a market that is uncertain like today? I would contemplate that yes, you do, but there are alternatives to where maybe you can have a really high-caliber accounting partner that's allowing you to have a really good pulse on what's happening financially, and then you take over the analysis of the business. That could be one way that you could think about displacing some of your spend today in something that is still highly valuable to you, but you take on a little bit more of the work on interpretation of the output of the service provider. Today, go reach out to other suppliers, reach out to other similar businesses, your peers in your community, reach out to trade associations to determine what steps they are taking to see if you can somehow work together to understand how to move forward in a more sustainable manner. I hope that's a helpful overview on what's happening in the tariff market right now. It is super uncertain for everybody, and to the extent that we can all help one another, we will move forward better together. Good luck.